cultures and countries are so diverse, and thinking that everyone is the same is already rude. Their main responsibility is to push people inside the train so that the doors can be closed. I'm here to discuss the most popular stereotypes about China and sharing my personal experience after living in the country for 7 months. So let's get to it. First and the most absurd stereotype that I've unfortunately heard myself is that all Chinese people are the same, starting with the appearance and ending with the language, culture, etc. And if you ever think this about any nation or any country, please unthink it somehow. I don't know, because cultures and countries are so diverse, and thinking that everyone is the same is already rude, in my opinion. So, starting with appearance, no, Chinese people are not the same and Asian people are not the same. Then continuing with language and culture, the thing is that, for example, Mandarin Chinese, the one that people speak in Beijing, the capital of China, is only one version of Chinese. And the thing is that if you, go away from Beijing, like 2 hours, 3 hours away, you will hear an absolutely different Chinese. For example, Russian language is my native language, and I visited some of the countries except Russia, with people there speaking Russian, and well, it's easy to understand for me, even if they use some other words and the pronunciation is a bit different. It's all right, I can still understand it. But with Chinese, oh my god, it's it's a disaster. I mean, like, not in that sense, but for foreigners especially. For example, I came to China without any knowledge of Chinese, so I just started learning Chinese there. It was Mandarin Chinese, which is like the kind of universal Chinese that foreigners usually learn. I traveled to some other parts of China, and it was already much harder to understand their Chinese dialect. And when I run into some videos where Chinese bloggers that speak different dialect, they do speak it, and I'm like, oh my god, what are you saying? The words kind of sound the same, but you can't just grasp that main idea over there, saying it's extremely different. Some people might not speak Mandarin Chinese. There can be some misunderstanding or confusion even among local people. And to talk about culture, well, China is a very big country, and even in Latvia, for example, where I spent the last 3 years, it's quite small, very small country. And even in Latvia, if you travel from one region to another, there are differences in culture and in language. And if you imagine China, a very big country, obviously there are cultural and linguistic differences. So hopefully I cleared up this stereotype, so it's absolutely untrue. And the second stereotype is actually very funny, and when I heard it, I immediately thought about Kung Fu Panda cartoon, because this stereotype is about all Chinese people doing martial arts and some Kung Fu, etc. Well, it's not true that all Chinese people do martial arts, but I should say here that Chinese people are super active, and if you go outside in the evening, you will see so many people doing sports, different kind of sports like table tennis, or doing some stuff on the sport ground, or running. And it's not only among youngsters, but mostly among elderly people, which was absolutely surprising and inspiring for me, because I've been doing running quite actively at that time, and it was just, just the environment makes you run, and do some sport, and it's amazing. And I also mentioned in my previous videos about this, that in the evenings they have such activities. Well, again, mostly among elderly people, is that they have their kind of communities. I don't know, maybe it's like among neighborhoods, etc. Is that they get outside and they dance different kind of dances, or they do sports together, or they do martial arts, but not like to actually use it and beat somebody with it, but just to be active, to stay in shape. And it's fascinating. I've tried to participate as well because it's a really nice way to get closer to their culture. So this stereotype is untrue, but I should say that martial arts are quite popular in China and some people really do that. The next stereotype about food, most probably if you think about Chinese food, you think that in China, they only eat the dishes that you can order in your local Chinese restaurant. And it's another misleading information because, well, China, as I said before, is a very big country, and from city to city, from province to province, the dishes differ a lot. And I think there is a countless number of Chinese dishes you can try, and I think even a lifetime will not be enough to try everything and to enjoy everything. Unfortunately, I'm a big fan of Chinese food, and I also have an example because like I've lived in Beijing, and well, I haven't even tried all the dishes there are in Beijing. And when we traveled to the seaside, it's Yellow Sea, it was like 2-3 hours away from Beijing. They had different cuisine there. I mean, like it was still Chinese cuisine, but it was more with seafood, etc. And it's just, yeah, a lot of different dishes all over China. So don't think that they only eat some dumplings and one type of noodle. It's not true. The next stereotype, I understand where it comes from. China is all about copying. Well, here maybe we talk about Chinese companies, and of course it comes from all those replicas of clothing, of devices that we run into when we want to buy something. And when we see this made in China, we usually people from abroad usually have this bad association that it's of bad quality or it's just a copy of something and it's not good. Yeah, of course, well, this type of products are very popular abroad, but in reality, if you're in China and you have a chance to buy from local brands, from local companies, well, it's not true that it will be of bad quality and it's just a copy of something else, because China is a very technologically developed country and they create so many new technologies that is not a copy of something else from abroad, but originally made thing or device, etc. And if you buy, some clothes or some makeup that is made by a Chinese company, it doesn't mean that it would be something like from AliExpress that maybe is not of the best quality. So this stereotype is partly true because of course there are brands that copy foreign brands, some popular products, but some local brands that want to develop their identity, of course they create some unique products of good quality. So this part is untrue. The next stereotype is obviously connected with China being overpopulated and overpolluted, and I think that this stereotype is completely true because, well, again, of course it depends on the place, because if you come to some province and you will not live in the biggest city in that province, but in smaller one, of course it won't be like overpopulated or something. But if you go to some popular places like Beijing or Shanghai, well, be ready that there will be plenty of people. The worst time is to go explore the city. It's the rush hour, and if you want to use, for example, subway, it's gonna be a disaster because in China there are special positions for workers in subway, and their main responsibility is to push people inside the train so that the doors can be closed. I think it speaks for itself that it's extremely a lot of people. If you go to some tourist places, really lots of people there. And talk about pollution, it's another sad side of life in China. At least when I lived there, it was just a complete disaster because Beijing, for example, it's surrounded by mountains, and all the dirty air that is stuck in the city or that is left from some, plants, factories, like some production, it's stuck in the city, and it can be stuck for days or weeks or even longer. Well, I'm not an expert on this, but the quality, like the air quality in Beijing especially, it's like the worst ever, and some countries, like neighboring countries, also suffer from it. And even if we put some like air quality aside, if we talk about packaging, like plastic, it's everywhere. Oh my god, it's everywhere. Chinese people love packaging, unnecessary packaging, and well, if they recycled it, maybe it would be better, but they don't recycle it. Well, some of course do, but mostly people just threw it on the ground, and the trash, the garbage is everywhere, and it's very sad to see. Hopefully government, or just, I don't know, local people themselves, they will try to do something with this. It's the same thing actually happening in Montenegro here, where I live now. I'm very concerned about nature and environment, because I, well, try my best, I can say, like to recycle something, to buy something secondhand and not new ones. So this stereotype is unfortunately true, but hopefully it will get better. I think that was the last thing I want to discuss today. Let me know, about your experience, if you visited China, if you've been communicating with Chinese people a lot, if you agree or you don't agree with something I've been mentioning, because most of the things I've mentioned, it was based on my personal experience and on the things that I heard from people that I know. So yep, see you in my next video, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.